Dr. J here. I'm going to walk us through how to draw a dorsal view of the dermatocranium bones of a primitive amniote. If you just want the labeled bones, jump right to the end of the video. Otherwise, stay right here and we'll walk through the drawing. I'll start out with a sort of a coffin shape. And now we divided up the midline because vertebrates are bilaterally symmetrical. And we give it nostrils at the front and eyes a little bit anterior to the widest point. And a pineal opening about halfway between the eyes and the posterior of the skull. Next, I'm going to make some lines involving the nostrils, and then I'm going to connect the nostrils and the eyes along the inside. Now I'm going to make another line from the nostrils to the edge of the skull just below the eyes. And I'm going to start making some loops near the eyes. So connection to that first line, and now a loop behind each eye that I'm going to subdivide into two bones. Now it's time for some cross connections. One here, and another here, and a connection from each eye to that lateral bone I created. Now let's add some bones to the posterior part of the skull. I'm going to draw narrow quadratojugulars at the edges. And then I'm going to add a series of bones in the posterior part of the skull. Notice that there's a row of 3 little bones on each side. Now, a few more connections. One from this loop to my quadratojugal, and another from the other bone of that loop back to the little series of 3 that I drew on each side. Now we're ready to label some things. The bones around those that pineal opening are the parietal bones. In front of those are the frontals. In front of those are the nasals. Those very anterior bones are premaxilla bones. And I put a maxilla on each side. The ones in between, the maxilla and the nasals, are the lacrimal bones. And the ones immediately in front of the eyes are prefrontal bones. Then, lateral to the eyes, we have the jugal bones. Behind that, the quadratojugal bones. In between the quadratojugals and the parietals, we have the squamosals. And notice how the jugal meets up with both the quadratojugal and the squamosal. In behind the eye, we have a postfrontal and a postorbital. That brings us back around to our little series of bones at the very posterior end of the skull. The ones on the midline are the postparietals. The ones adjacent to the postparietals are tabular bones. And the ones in between the tabular bones and the squamosal are the supratemporal bones. There you have a complete set of the typical dermatocranium bones of a primitive amniote in dorsal view. You should be able to figure out many other skulls from the example given here.